Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Tiran, and in today's video, we're going to take a look at the cool Tiran and Zandalari racials to some extent. Now, the racials themselves are not out yet, but what we do have is the names of the racials and the icons corresponding to those racials. Since we have more stuff with Zandalari and brand new stuff with cool Tirans, like for example, these are the racials: Brush It Off, Child of the Sea, Haymaker, Jack of all trades, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and then we got a couple totem, like the Ward of Loa and Embrace of Loa racials for the Zandalari. I want to take a little bit of time to speculate what these racials could be, what these racials might do, and kind of just try to guess here what these racials could potentially be once cool Tirans and Zandalari come out. These two allied races are very interesting because we know so little about them. We only have seen just a few transmogrification stuff with them in terms of their, I guess, allied race attire, like the heritage armor they'll wear. We've seen a lot of the Zandalari, I guess, environment and the Aztec, Mayan kind of style, Inca style culture. Then we've seen the cool Tiran, very seaworthy culture in game. And it's only, I guess, a matter of time until we see the final racials themselves. But I do want to do some speculation, because I feel like some of these are pretty easy to guess. There are two that I'm not sure exactly what they could be, but 3 of the 5 allied racials for cool Tirans, I think I can guess. The Zandalari, I have an interesting idea, so I think it's kind of fun to do just a bit of guessing while we're waiting for those two finally to come out. Anyway, let's get into it. And we have some of them right here. Brush It Off, Child of the Sea, Haymaker, Jack of all trades, and Rhyme of the Mariner. So now we know that World of Warcraft racials mostly are passive except for like one active. I'm gonna guess Haymaker is the active one. So let's take a look at some of the other passives before we looked at Haymaker. Child of the Sea, some people have already guessed, and I think you guys would guess as well. Looks like a person swimming underwater. Child of the Sea, probably extra movement speed while underwater. I think it'd be an interesting buff, and it won't really do anything too crazy, because Child of the Sea, there's not a lot of classes or races, I guess, that have a movement speed. Unless you're a druid, you don't really swim fast underwater. So for cool Tirans being raised in the sea, faster movement speed only would make sense while they're underwater. Probably might even have maybe extended breath hold, kind of like similar to Undead, how they can just hold their breath forever. These guys can maybe hold their breath longer than everybody else. Even though holding your breath in WoW, I feel like unless you're doing some kind of a weird quest that makes you go underwater for a very long time for like some hidden item, I don't think there's ever really a reason to have, you know, increased breath holding. I'm pretty sure it's going to be for sure movement speed, possibly holding your breath. Jack of all trades, I think is going to be an interesting one, and it's going to be a flexible profession. I feel like this one is, normally you have, you know, certain professions like, oh, Tauren, plus 15 to herbalism, High Mountain Tauren, plus 15 to mining, you know, stuff like that. Goblin, Gnome, extra engineering, stuff like that. So I think Jack of all trades is going to be plus 10 to any profession of choice. It's not going to be quite as heavy as plus 15, but if let's say you decide, I'm going to be a blacksmith, plus 10. And then you decide, I'm also going to pick up mining, plus 10 to that as well, just to get you a head start in those professions. And if you decide to change a profession, it's always going to give you plus 10. It just seems like cool Tirans are the kind of people that are very hardy and very good with their hands. They built a lot, and they're kind of like a survivor type of style. I mean, to live out on the sea, on in the ocean area, for as long as they have been, with their type of culture, the hardy big boys that they got going on for cool Tirans, I feel like they would be pretty skilled with just a bunch of different skills. They are, in a sense, survivalists, so I guess it would make sense to maybe do something very interesting in professions. I think it is going to be 10 just because you can get so much more value rather than like a 15 in one. But Blizzard might even do that in certain professions, like what looks like here: a mining pickaxe, blacksmith hammer, skinning knife, and food, maybe? Maybe in those areas they might be able to get a 15. So if you want to get one of those for your professions, mining, skinning, blacksmithing, or culinary, I think maybe that could give them an extra bonus. Or I just thought of it, all the secondary professions get a plus 15. Not a primary, but all the secondary, like first aid, archaeology, I guess cooking, anything, you know, that is secondary will get a plus ahead. That could be a 2, and that could be really cool. Some of the other passives, Brush It Off, I feel like is either going to be a CC reduction, similar to how we got orcs with stun reduction, 20% less effective. We got Makha orcs with curses and poison and diseases, 20% less in duration. We got your trolls that are have a kind of reduction towards roots and slows, It's like that kind of a CC reduction. It's going to be just like a certain CC, like roots and slows, last 20% less, or 10% less, or something like that, or stuns, or all CC lasts 5% less, or something along those lines. I feel like it might be that, or Brush It Off could do with damage. In the past, Blizzard has done, like for example, Dark Iron Dwarves that came out and said 1% less physical damage. You just take 1% less all physical damage. So it's one of those like 1% nature, 1% whatever. So this could be 1% maybe to all types of damage. Or Brush It Off might even say something about like Brewmaster Monks, kind of like how they can brush off the damage, like get a stagger to it. Maybe these guys will have some kind of an inborn stagger mechanic. But I think this one definitely will have to do with either reduction of CC, which I think this was going to be, or reduction of multiple forms of damage, kind of like back to the whole Kul Tiran's a survivalist type of people. Rime of the Ancient Mariner, I cannot guess. I have no idea. I think this one just might be you take less water damage or frost damage, 2% less. I think this one honestly has potential with the name that it has and the icon that it has. It's going to be a flavor one for the allied race. I wouldn't know exactly what that flavor would be, but it'll be similar to how Dark Iron Dwarves can summon the underground digging machine, and it can take him to certain places. I think it'd be similar in that style. It won't be something you'll be using regularly while PvPing or doing dungeons. I think it'll be something flavorful that has to do with the whole Jaina and her dad and the necklace and beware, beware, the daughter of the sea. Maybe it'll be just them singing. That could be interesting. But I do think, if anything, it might be like a passive, like -2 to damage reduction. So then the Brush It Off would be a CC reduction, which would make these guys, again, more confirmed that they are survivalist type of allied race. Finally, the one I think for sure is going to end up being is Haymaker. Haymaker is going to be a huge fist, as the Haymaker suggests. That's a big windup. You can see that Haymaker from a mile away. So it might be like a 3-second, 2-second cast of just you stopping and then punch the enemy. For the allied race, for Alliance in particular, Blizzard has never shied away so far with the Void Elves and Lifeforged Orion from damage increases. 5% damage increase to Void Elves I thought was insanely OP, because it's basically a trinket worth of effect for an allied race, and it procs fairly often. Then you have your Lightforged, which simply have damage increase, just a big zap of damage from the sky, holy damage. If you are a holy Retribution Paladin, you actually have some combos with it. So I feel like this one is going to be a damage and punch, but I think it's going to have some damage to it. It's going to be maybe a cleave type of mechanic, and it's going to have a slight knockback. Not a huge knockback, but a slight. So I think it'd be cool to maybe be a Kul Tiran hunter. You trap somebody at Lumber Mill on the ledge with a trap, and you do the Haymaker to punch him off. I think that'd be kind of cool. That's what I think the racial is going to be. I feel like it will fit the allied race super well. Yeah, this is what I got for the Kul Tirans. Let's move on to the Zandalari Druids now. And this one I have a lot better ideas, because I think these are more straightforward. So when you're playing in the Zandalari area as the Horde, there's a lot of shrines all over the place. One to just about every single Loa. Every single shrine does a slightly different thing. Some of them I can remember is Akunda has a chance to zap an enemy. One Samdi, when you kill an enemy, they summon a spirit, and that spirit fights for you, and then I think when it dies, it does an explosion effect after a while. Gonk, you summon 2 raptors to fight by your side at a chance. Kambul, I actually have no idea. I never ended up doing that Loa. Pragwa, when you are close to death, it will put a bubble on you and it'll start healing you. And then Paku, I think it'll increase your movement speed and haste for every enemy that you kill. I'm pretty sure that that's how it goes. So I think it's going to be a watered down version of those Embrace of the Loa, I guess. The racial will be a watered down version of those shrines, what the actual buff is. Like for example, with Gonk, what if you got raptors to fight for you for 10 seconds? So like, whatever class you are, you basically become an enhanced shaman for 10 seconds. You summon 2 raptors to fight for you for a little bit, then they disappear. One Samdi, when you let's say attacking enemies and you kill them in a dungeon, you spawn a small spirit, which will do some damage and will do a little bit AoE. So it won't be quite as powerful as it is from the actual shrine, but it will be like a mini version. So like in a dungeon environment, you might want to run that. Akunda could be a random once in a blue moon chance for nature damage, but it could be a big set of nature damage. So if you get lucky, that could be decent. Progba could be just a purely defensive one. Let's say you drop below a certain amount of health, you get a slight absorb and a slight heal, just a very small one that maybe refreshes every few seconds. Nothing too overpowered. And Paku, I think, is going to be some kind of a haste buff every time you kill an enemy up to a certain cap, maybe of like 5%, and maybe slight movement speed. I don't know what Kambui is though, or Kambul. Kamibul is in terms of the actual shrine ability, but again, I think watered down version. How I think this Embrace of Loa will work is because you can choose your shrines. You will choose which Loa you want to serve. And I think it's going to have some kind of a long cooldown for the choice of the Loa, so you can't really switch the Loa. But let's say you decide Bonsamdi. You can't choose anybody else for a while. You choose Bonsamdi, and that's the ratio you can use for maybe like a day until you go and reset it somewhere or reset it somehow. Maybe some time lasts and you change it up. But you'll use that one. It'll have like a 5-minute cooldown, but it will have a pretty cool effect. All of them might even have a 5-minute cooldown, but actually the effect of it might be pretty big. And it will be more of a choice, like, hey, I'm a tank, or hey, I'm doing a dungeon. Bonsamdi and the racial, like, for the chance for a spirit to spawn is more likely to happen in a dungeon. I'm killing multiple enemies, I'm AoEing them down, extra AoE damage could be nice. Gonk could be pretty good for like the when you're just leveling solo, and whenever Gonk runs out to help you in single target, like tank things for you. Kragwa could be pretty good for healers and tanks, but a slight absorb. Paku could be good for like anybody who is a caster for extra haste. Akunda could be that RNG. So I feel like it's going to give you that choice. Then there's another one called Ward of the Lower, and it looks like there's one for every single element. Arcane, Fire, Frost, Holy, Nature, and Shadow. And I think this is going to be simply a 2% damage reduction for you and your party. Maybe 1%, but I'm thinking maybe 2 to make it a little more significant. Whatever totem you choose, it'll probably last there for 10 to 15 seconds and will give a damage reduction of that element to your party and yourself. So if you're in a raid and you're expecting a bunch of shadow damage from an enemy, you drop in a shadow totem and will have like a 5-minute, maybe 10-minute cooldown, because that damage reduction will actually be pretty big. It won't be enough where in a 1v1 fight, you know, that 2% for you doesn't really do much, but for your whole raid to have a slight help in your raid, I think that would be cool. I think it would be a very interesting setup, and if it works with your raid party and dungeon party, I think it would be extremely cool. I mean, you're dropping a totem, you're dropping a Ward of the Loa. If it only affects you, I guess that's interesting, but if it affects others, that'll be even more interesting. So imagine 5 Zandalari trolls doing Mythic Plus dungeons. You could all get all together combined might, 10%, oh, the 2% totems dropped, and it's like 10% shadow damage reduction for your whole group. That could be actually kind of cool. That would offer some synergies with the playstyle, with the different Loa that you can run. That's what I'm thinking is going to end up being for the Zandalari. The Zandalari one I actually thought about for a while, and I feel like it would fit so well, and I think it would be also very fun. That's kind of how I'm looking at a lot of these racials, is what would be fun, what would be interesting, what cool new mechanics could they add that makes a Zandalari trolls, Zandalari warrior, Zandalari shaman, Zandalari rogue, Zandalari hunter play a little bit different than any other hunter, any other troll, any other warrior, any other rogue, any class in the game. And for Tirans, I think it's actually a pretty good one. I know that Jack of Trades and Child of Sea I feel pretty confident on. Brush It Off and Rhyme of the Mariner I don't feel quite as comfortable. Haymaker, however, I'm pretty certain it's going to be a big old hit with a slight knockback and a bit extra damage, and it's going to be maybe a single target, maybe like a cleave in front of you. I'd be cool regardless. Anyway, I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on what do you think the allied races for all these guys could be. Let me know all that stuff in the comments below if you guys have any of your own ideas. But this is what I got so far. As soon as these come out, I want to review them, take a look at how viable and valuable they are in PvP and PvE as soon as we actually have finalized racials. But until then, we can only speculate. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think these racials could be? As always, subscribe, hit the like if you guys want to help support the channel, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.